Welcome back as we hop into week 2 of this ground up ADU build. You can see the footings are in. We'll go over a bunch of details on the footing, but just briefly, it's gonna be 16 inches wide and 8 inches deep, which is the requirement locally for a 2-story building. Although this ADU in the front and ADU in the back are both single story, we like to go with the wider, thicker footing just because it's about the same amount of labor, just a little bit more concrete, and you get a better product. So in our area, our code for a single story would be a 6-inch thick footing that's 12 inches wide. Again, we're going 8 inches deep and 16 inches wide. There's number 4 rebar, 2 pieces in the bottom of that, and then there'll be 1 piece of number 4 rebar in the top with vertical rebar sticks every 4 feet. And just a quick measurement reference for rebar. The number is 1/8 of an inch. So number 3 rebar would be 3/8. Number 4 rebar would be 1/2 inch. So that's just some of the kind of terminology that we use when we're putting in footings and forums and panels in here. Again, we've got 2x8s, so 7.5 inch deep, and they're held up. We want a 1% slope minimum on our house pad, so we have drainage. Water will go down and hit this native clay and just build up if we don't have anywhere for it to run. So 2x8 footing here, we're 16 inches wide, and then here is our 1/2 inch, what we'd call number 4 rebar. And there's 2 options for your rebar. You can either set it on an adobe to keep it up about 3 inches, or what we do is we just tie wire to it and hang it from these clips. These clips also serve the purpose of holding the supports for the panels. So we'll screw those down, it'll hold our 1.125" plywood 8 inches apart, and when we fill this up with concrete, it'll keep the bottoms from pooching out. So that's the footing. So you can pour this in 2 ways. One would be to pour it once, just fill the footing, and then you would come back, snap lines, use concrete nails to mount your clips that hold your panels. Or what we're gonna do is a single pour, also known as a monolithic pour, where we stack our panels on top and square everything up, and then we'll pour it all in one. So it kind of depends on the area and your concrete style and your concrete contractor of which one of those 2 you might get. Metal stakes, we use a 16 or 18 inch metal stake. We put them probably every 3 to 5 feet. And what we want those to do is keep the footings from, again, pooching out with the weight of the concrete. We also use them to keep the elevation right. So we shoot the top of these in with a grade stick and a laser. They don't have to be perfect because we're gonna snap a perfect level line inside our panel, and that's where the top of our concrete will be. But it just takes a little bit more time to level the tops of the footings, and then we level them side to side so everything is hopefully plumb level and square. Pretty basic stuff to do your own footings. Tools that you would need would be a few hand saws, a skill saw to cut your 2x8, 2x6, 2x4 footing stock. There's a rebar bender behind me. Those are about $500 for a nice professional grade one. We've got to bend our rebar to put it into our footings, and then a laser level to level everything as you shoot it in, as well as a hot saw to cut the metal, and a few other basic hand tools. If you don't have the panels, which are really expensive and really heavy, you can always rent those. So don't think you can't DIY your own foundation. So we finally have some good weather on this job. The footings are just about set. We've got our clips on, all the number 4 rebar, 2 rows in the bottom of this footing, suspended 3 inches off of the native soil. That's all ready. Now we're gonna stack the panels. So these are 1.125" plywood cut at 24 inches. So they're big and they're heavy. This is one reason why I always sub out concrete. I help Pat and the gang, but I don't do it all myself because of all the material you need. So this is a 28 by 30 ADU, and the other ADU is 22 by 24. So there's about 200 linear feet. So you have to double that. You need a forum board for each side of that, and then you need a 1.125" plywood by 24 inch deep panel for each side of that again. So you can do the math. That's hundreds of feet of forum boards and hundreds of feet of 1.125" plywood paneling. So by the time you purchase all that stuff and store it, it's easier to just hire somebody else to come do the footing for you. That's one of the 6 subcontractors that I always recommend people hire out on their ADU build. Let's go look at the detail of the panel and how it stacks on the footing. So earlier I referred to the two ways that you can pour your foundation, either in two pours by pouring the footing and then stacking the panels, or a monolithic pour, which is what we're doing here, which is stacking the panels on the footings, and we're gonna pour it all in one shot. Again, that saves a little bit of time and a little bit of money. Pat and Mark are here. They're gonna lay out all the panels today. We're gonna hang the top piece of number 4 rebar. We're gonna put the verticals every 4 feet. These are 24-inch, 1.1 plywood panels, and they're gonna put them into place with these clips. Tell us what's going on, Mark.
We're building the outside of the foundation. 1.1 panels, like you said, putting them in these ready clips.
What do the ready clips do?
They keep the bottom from blowing out when you fill it up with concrete.
Okay.
Hold it on your building line. And we got inspection tomorrow, so we better get busy.
Another reason why it's good to sub out your concrete and your footing is because all the material is heavy. The footing boards, the 1.1 panels, the rebar, the concrete itself. It's a hard job. It's probably the best money I ever spend when I pay Pat when he's done. Here's a good look at the anatomy of the inside of the footing. So again, number 4 rebar, we have them suspended 3 inches off the native soil. Here's a ready clip, and you can purchase these. They're obviously pre-made, and they are set up for the panel size. So these are set up for 1.1 panels. You can also get them set up for 3/4 or 7/8 panels. And they go on the bottom. We try to put these about every 24 inches to keep the panels from blowing out. And then also when both sides of the panels are stacked, we'll put those across the top to keep the top from opening up. Another key point of this process is when the outside panel only is up, we'll set the laser back up and we'll get marks for level of the top of our stem wall, and then we'll snap it out. You can see an old line here that was snapped out. So we'll snap out a level line, and then we put in these little pin nails every 12 to 16 inches, and those will actually, we'll use those as our guide to trowel level 2. We just about have all the form boards up. Again, stacked on the footings, we have 1.1 plywood. So we're just getting ready to pour after we snap the line on this front panel and set the few vents. Here are the plastic vents that we're using, and you've got to put one of these per every like 200 square feet of crawl space. So we put them in the corners within 3 feet of each corner. We like to hold them down about 4 inches. Some people hold them just under the bottom plate. It all depends, but make sure that you check your local standards for underfloor venting. If we were doing a slab on grade footing foundation monopore, we wouldn't have any vents into the crawl space. So just one more step to think about. You can see all the bracing. We put 2x4s on edge all the way down the sides, and then we tie in these turnbuckles so you can put a string line from corner to corner and then adjust the turnbuckles to take any little snakes out of the wall. We want to make sure that our stem walls are really straight. When we strip these off, there's nothing worse than looking down the side of the building and seeing a little bit of a bow. So pay particular attention to how straight your panels are and make sure everything is shored up. The last thing we'll do before we pour this is go through and put some last minute corner and side bracing on the middles of these panels where all that force is going to want to be pushing everything out. In the back unit here, the back ADU, will look inside these stem walls. You can see every 4 feet there's a vertical that's tied in top and bottom. The 2 pieces of number 4 rebar in the bottom, the single piece on the top. And what we do is we tie them into the side panel with a nail. That's just going to hold it in place, and then as we pump concrete in here, we'll center these. Again, anywhere you have a lap of 2 sticks of rebar, they need to be tied together on both ends. And then in the corners here, we have the vents. They've got to be within 3 feet of an outside edge, and they're held in just on the corners with little pin nails. We'll look down the side of this panel. Here's a good look at the kickers that we use for side support. We run a 2x4 on edge all the way down, and then these turnbuckles here are used to adjust the panel in and out so it's a nice straight line. You can see all the linear footage of 2x6 here for this little pony wall footer. All the exterior footer stock is 2x8. It's all super heavy stuff. These panels, again, 1.1/8 plywood. There's probably about 700 or 800 linear feet of 2x6, 2x8, and 1.1/8 by 24-inch panel. So a lot of stuff. Probably 200 stakes, 200 metal stakes. Here's an example of one of those. So another reason why concrete is one of the 6 subcontractors I use. I work with all my subs, like I've been working with Pat and Mark the last couple days, but by hiring a subcontractor, you don't have to buy all this stuff. You don't have to carry it around all over. You don't have to store it. And a few times a year when we're gonna do one of our own builds, we just call them and have them come help us, and they bring all this equipment, including this super heavy bomb-proof rebar bender and cutter. Another tool that's nice to not have to pack around every day is this vibratory whacker. This thing weighs about 400 pounds. Almost die every time we put it in or out of the truck. Everything is ready to pump. So the truck is on site. We've got the pump. They're gonna just let the truck gravity feed into the pump, and then they have a pressurized 2-inch line, and Andy's gonna be running that into the forums the whole way. First, they're gonna go around and fill up the bottom, let that start to harden, and then they'll fill up the top section of the panel boards, paying particular attention to directing concrete underneath the vents. That's the one problem area when we use a pump. The county inspector was here about an hour ago. We had to get an inspection prior to filling the footings and form boards up with concrete. The inspector came out on site and looked into the footings to make sure that the rebar was there, that it was proper size, that it was all tied together the way it should have been, and properly braced. While the inspector was here, I actually asked him if he would be okay with an interview, and he said he had to talk to his boss, but hopefully the next time the inspector is back out here, he'll have the A-OK from the building official to be on camera, and I'm gonna hopefully interview him and ask him what he's looking for, what he likes to see when he shows up for different inspections of your build. So I look forward to that. Cost breakdown on this part of the job, we have 20 yards of concrete in this pour. It's gonna be 2 trucks. It's $3,000 for the concrete. We're about $150 a yard delivered with the air and the additives we have in this batch. And then the pump that's pumping the concrete is $300, $250 or $300. I haven't seen the bill yet. So that's what we're paying for concrete and the pump. I'll get the bill from the concrete guys as soon as they strip, and I'll share that with you. It's usually about $35 to $40 a linear foot of footing and stem wall combined. So Andy's leading the way, and behind Andy, the rest of the crew is gonna come back and hand trowel in the edge of the footing where it meets the form board. If that's not done, the form boards will be really hard to strip. Long day to say the least, but we got the foundation poured. All done, took about 4 hours, 2 trucks, 20 yards, $3,110 worth of concrete alone. That's where we're at up to date. We look forward to seeing you on the next video. Feel free to like and subscribe if this content brings you great value. Thanks for sticking around to the end.